Okay, so in this video, I'm just going to give a brief review of quiz 1 and some of the information they might need to know to be successful on the quiz. Most people do really well on the first one and the subsequent quizzes as well, but if you have any questions or issues along the way, just please let me know. Again, this quiz, you'll have 90 minutes to complete. It's mostly true and false. There's a couple matching questions and some short answer questions as well, but as long as you review this video and have kept up with your readings, then I'm sure you'll do great. Okay, so some of the main components are ethics. And for ethics in research, there's a couple quick items that I'd like to go through here, one of which is wait lists. As we've talked about in the semester, lots of times in randomized controlled research, subjects might be put on a wait list and compared to a different group of subjects who got a treatment. As long as the people who are on the wait list eventually have the opportunity to get the treatment, that's not necessarily unethical in itself. So it is something that's pretty commonly used in research practice. Also, we talked about informed consent earlier in the modules. One thing to keep in mind is individuals who are above the age of 18 can provide informed consent as long as they have decisional capacity, whereas participants aged 13 through 17 can provide assent, but they would still need a guardian to provide informed consent for them because it would be illegal to say that they had the decisional capacity to agree to participate in a study before they're the age of majority. Also, regarding ethics, having an ethical code does not ensure ethical practice. Although it helps to guide our practice, it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's going to be following it. So that's why we often consult with colleagues or have a review board that would look to ensure that we are providing ethical practice and ethical research. I would also say it's important to look through the discussion forum on the Milgram study, which has to do with deception, and Henrietta Lacks study, which has to do with informed consent, and also to be familiar with the ethical principles of avoiding conflicts of interest, voluntary participation, publishing accurate and honest results, and avoiding conflicts of interest. So regarding literature reviews, just a few points here. A good question can be revised. The more that you learn about a particular topic, you can kind of guide the question that you're trying to answer. So when coming up with a hypotheses for a literature review, a theory can help us to make predictions about some aspects of the world, and we can use the literature review to help guide and locate theoretical work that helps us to test our hypotheses. Also, as you're looking through data, it's a good idea to be familiar with the differences between primary data, which could be like a research article itself, versus secondary data, which could be something like your textbook. And a few different places that we can look for these data are in places like PsycInfo, Google Scholar, the EWM Library, or PubMed. All these are good ways to search for research articles related to a literature review that we're conducting. Okay, so some other things to be aware of for research, the difference between qualitative and quantitative research. Empirical data also is a good thing to be aware of in that we obtain this through experimentation, where we're testing theory about the social world and phenomena. As far as research inducements, oftentimes people are given incentives to participate, which can, if used incorrectly, influence the voluntary nature of participation. So that's something to be aware of. Also, good quality research question is one that seeks to answer questions about social phenomena through collection of firsthand verifiable empirical data. So kind of a different way of saying that second bullet point. A couple other points here is just to be aware of a dependent variable versus an independent variable. So a dependent variable is one that is going to be influenced by the independent variable. So a dependent variable is ultimately what would be changed through manipulation of the independent variable. And lastly, a full review by University IRB includes a summary of the proposal, potential risks, benefits. All of these are going to be discussed in depth through the IRB. And although this isn't a practice course and the first modules haven't been focused on it, just at a point that oftentimes we confuse that practice wisdom of our colleagues as the best guide for making practice decisions, whereas I think it should be obvious at this point that the research should be guiding our practice on what the best practice decision is. Okay, it's also good to be able to define some items like this. So just examples of what you might see in the long answer could be defining validity, illogical reasoning, evidence-based practice, and generalizability. So some topics that we've covered in depth so far in the modules. And another thing from the discussion forum is Simpson's change model for the 4 core stages of transfer. So this is in the discussion forum, so you might want to check out that article and just kind of have an idea of what the main issues were within the article and kind of describe what the process was.